Jack thought it was all over. But another surprise attack almost cost him his life. Despite being heavily guarded by the police, the enemy still managed to strike. Who is behind it all? A huge conspiracy is slowly unfolding. And Jack may not be the only victim. Please continue watching the video. Jack had just stepped into the house when he suddenly collapsed. His whole body collapsing as if he had no strength left. Tien's shrill scream echoed in the empty yard, and Jack's mother rushed forward in panic, tears streaming down her face in despair. Both women frantically supported Jack's limp body, helping him into the bedroom in utter panic. Tien immediately ran to get a glass of water, her hands shaking so much she couldn't hold the glass. Meanwhile, Jack's mother sat by the bed, tremblingly holding her son's hand, continuously calling his name in a choked sob. Her face was pale, her eyes unable to hide the fear of seeing her son once again in a critical condition. "Jack, wake up, it's me. It's me," she whispered through tears. Tien brought water in, gently lifted Jack's head and brought the glass to his lips. 1 drop, then 2 drops. The water soaked into his dry, cracked lips, and miraculously, Jack moved slightly. His eyes slowly opened, cloudy and lethargic, but it was a sign of life. His mother burst into tears, and Tien held his hand as if she had just escaped from a nightmare. After a few minutes of silence and emotion, the three of them began to talk. No one spoke about the fear they had just experienced, but in their eyes, they all understood. This was not the end, but only the beginning of the dark days ahead. Tien sat close to the edge of the bed, her eyes still fixed on Jack's pale face. She squeezed his hand gently, then spoke, both gentle and full of doubt. "Where did you go today? Who did you meet?" Jack frowned, trying to remember, his voice hoarse as he replied, I went to the farm for a while. Met Mr. Dong, my ex-father-in-law. There were a few things I needed to ask about the land behind. After that, I took the opportunity to stop by to see Mr. Tuan, the person who did the land paperwork the other day, and then went straight home." Tien was stunned, her eyes flashed with suspicion. She continued to ask, her voice slower, "Did you eat or drink anything there?" "Yes. Mr. Dong poured me a glass of water. Mr. Tuan also invited me a cup of coffee. When I left, I felt a bit dizzy. I thought it was the sun. But who would have thought?" Jack couldn't continue, and Tien's heart was pounding. She turned her face away to hide her eyes that were starting to burn, her mind spinning with a series of hypotheses. Ex-father-in-law and the land document man? She had never suspected this deeply. But at this moment, all her senses were ringing. She remembered Mr. Dung's meaningful gaze the day before, and Uncle Tuan's ambiguous expression during the paperwork. Tien took a deep breath, then turned to Jack. This time her eyes were full of determination. "Jack, I don't think this is an accident. Someone deliberately tried to harm you, and I will find that person." In the quiet light, the room suddenly became colder. A secret was gradually revealed, and Tien knew it was time to face it. That night, after making sure Jack was asleep, Tien tiptoed out of the room. Jack's mother was also exhausted after a long day of worrying, no longer alert enough to notice the cold, determined gaze clearly appearing on Tien's face. She stood silently on the porch, her eyes looking far away where the farm was hidden in the thick darkness. A part of her still wanted to believe that it was all just a coincidence. A coincidence, but the intuition of a woman who had stumbled upon cruel calculations in life told her, this time someone's hand was intervening. The next morning, before the sunlight could penetrate the dense foliage, Tien had already left the house, her heart filled with anxiety. She could not rest assured when all the signs were unclear, and Jack almost lost his life after being subtly harmed many times. Unable to sit still, Tien began her investigation journey, searching for the truth herself. She put forward 2 main hypotheses. If it was Mr. Dong, who used to be her ex-father-in-law, then what was his motive? Maybe because he felt betrayed by Jack, when he resolutely left his control and rebuilt a new life without his support. Underneath his austere appearance, Mr. Dong always had something unpredictable, especially his cold eyes when mentioning old stories. But if the person behind it was Uncle Tuan, who had helped Jack with the land papers, then it was a different story. Uncle Tien used to laugh and talk intimately. But he was the one who knew the value of every inch of the farm. Could it be that he had discovered something valuable that Jack did not know yet? Or is he being manipulated by someone else? Tien walked slowly down the red dirt road leading into the forest. Each bush rustling as if whispering a secret. A feeling of unease welled up in her heart. If she guessed wrong, who would be the one to pay the price? Tien's footsteps slowed down as she reached the bend with dense bamboo bushes, where the road split into two branches, one leading towards the town, the other winding down to the low-lying area near the old stream, where Mr. Dung used to frequent. She stopped for a moment, her eyes quietly observing each tire mark still imprinted on the damp ground. In her mind, she was considering whether to go to Mr. Dung's house to ask first, or stop by the old land office where Uncle Tien used to work, even though he had retired. In the end, she chose to head towards Mr. Dung. She knew she needed an answer to something that had always bothered her. Why did he live alone in that dangerous sewer area? And why did he avoid mentioning Jack's accident? Just keep quiet or change the subject? On the way, Tien took out her phone and checked the messages Jack had shared, especially the exchange related to the purchase of the land behind the farm. Strangely, the land transfer papers were signed by Uncle Tien himself, even though according to regulations, he had been out of office for a while. Why was that? Was someone forging the signature? Or was Uncle Tien doing something shady behind Jack's back? Step by step towards the wooden bridge across the stream, Tien's heart felt weighed down by an ominous premonition. She felt like someone was following her. Tien walked across the old wooden bridge, her heart still in turmoil. When she got closer to the sewer area where Mr. Dung lived, she slowly observed her surroundings. Everything was still as simple as before, even more desolate after the recent rains. Returning to the farm, Mr. Dung was sitting by the small firewood stove, cooking a pot of thin porridge, his face sunburned and looking more tired than before. Seeing her coming, he looked up, not surprised but only nodded slightly, signaling her to sit down on the old wooden chair next to him. During the conversation, Tien tried to observe his attitude. She mentioned Jack's accident, the plots of land near the stream, the rumors in the village about an old map that had been hidden. But instead of avoiding it like before, this time Mr. Dung told everything frankly. He also showed Tien a handwritten letter of his own, in which he advised Jack to be cautious with people who do land records, especially Uncle Tien. Each word was simple, trembling with old age, but sincere and consistent. There was no reason for him to pretend at this time, especially when he lived almost in seclusion, was poor and had nothing to fight for. Tien left, feeling lighter. In her head, one thing rang out for sure: Mr. Dung was not the one behind it. Now, all suspicions seemed to be focused on one person, Uncle Tien. Leaving Mr. Dung's place, Tien did not return home but immediately turned onto the small road leading to the old land office, where Uncle Tien used to work many years ago. On the way, her mind seemed to be piecing together every detail. The more she thought, the more she saw the name Vu, Jack's cousin, as a missing piece in the whole case. Tien stopped in front of the coffee shop at the beginning of the alley, where people in the area often gathered. The owner, a woman in her 40s, spoke up as soon as she saw Tien. "Are you looking for Vu? The other day I saw him with Uncle Tien. It seemed like they were arguing at the Cow Dat intersection. Then he disappeared." The words sounded like an alarm bell. She immediately went to the old land office. The place had long since closed, but she found a former co-worker who confirmed that Uncle Tien had been coming back to retrieve old documents recently, especially those related to the plot of land that Jack had just bought, which had Vu's signature as a co-owner. A chill ran down Tien's spine. Vu and Uncle Tien were not only acquaintances, they had also colluded to forge documents, possibly to seize Jack's land. Tien left the old land office, feeling uneasy. She was certain of one thing: Uncle Tien not only knew Vu, Jack's cousin, but also had a close and shady connection with him. Vu was the one who had harmed Jack the last time, but after failing to meet Tien to get the will, he suddenly fled the area. leaving a suspicious gap in the investigation. At that time, everyone thought he was just a reckless person, acting out of jealousy towards Jack. But now, through each piece that Tien picked up, she gradually saw a bigger picture. There was a guiding hand behind. That person was Uncle Tuan. According to a former land officer, it was Uncle Tuan who had signed a guarantee for Vu in some previous transactions, even helping him legalize the temporary ownership of some land related to the farm Jack was exploiting. This was not made public, but was done secretly through a set of documents that were cleverly altered. That explains why when Jack bought more land to expand the camp, Vu's signature appeared, even though he was unaware of it. Tien recalled that in the days before the accident, Jack had asked her about some strangely altered land documents. Perhaps at that time, he had found a clue. And that's why Vu, under the manipulation of Uncle Tuan, had taken action first. But Vu was just a pawn, while the real mastermind was comfortably standing outside the law. At this moment, a decision flashed in Tien's mind. She had to confront Uncle Tuan directly, before he could erase all traces. Tien clenched her hands, her heart pounding in her chest as if it was about to burst. She knew clearly that if she hesitated any longer, all evidence would be destroyed. Uncle Tuan is not a simple person. He used to have a position. He used to manipulate documents carefully. And he knows the law well to circumvent the law. Now, if he is really the one behind it, then Vu's escape is just a smokescreen. On the way to Uncle Tuan's house, Tien took the opportunity to call a friend who works in the judiciary, asking him to verify the times Vu and Uncle Tuan appeared together in the land records, and not long after, she received a piece of news that made her heart freeze, a video clip extracted from the security camera of a car repair shop near the farm, recording the scene on the day Jack was murdered. A pickup truck stopped in the dark. The driver was none other than Uncle Tuan. Vu sat in the passenger seat. No more evidence was needed. The truth was clear. Both of them had planned it all in advance. Vu was the one who directly committed the crime, while Uncle Tuan was behind the scenes, supporting, concealing, and manipulating the entire land processing process to turn Jack's property into theirs.